So this order does matter. So I know that they wanted us to sit in this order.
All right, what's the order?
What's the order? Is it left to right or right to left? Let's do left to right. That makes sense, right? Okay. Hey, man. You're the boss.
I'll be here. So you're there.
And Loco will be here.
Loco's here. So I'm there. So this is my mic. Wait, doesn't Thorin need a mic?
Yes, he does.
Grab that one right there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Hey, Nick, can you grab that mic
Let me
up
just
there?
test. Get this all in my fucking face. Yeah, when I was listening to you, it had this weird tinny thing. Is it doing it now?
Great,
It's
and we can
because
just
it's
put
close
that-
together, so the other mic picks up the other mic. I think Kibble had it fixed because he alked it down, and it sounded better. Does that work?
You can just hold it too.
Hello? Yeah?
Yeah, I might just do that.
Just hold it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I think this is the
Is
best.
that light going to be in my eyes the whole time? Someone swap with me.
Yeah.
Someone swap. I'm not sitting here.
No.
I can't
Doug-
have lights in my
Doug-
eyes. That's one rule I have.
Sit there, then you.
Duck
grumpy
it, it's
bastard.
exactly the same in every seat.
Yeah, it's in my eyes. It's in my eyes for sure.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Sat down. Okay. Fuck. All right. Well, fuck me, dude. It's just as well we work with each other. You're a fucking asshole.
I'm walking it.
Just hold it in your hand.
All right, I'll move.
I can't take you anywhere, dude.
This is quite the grouping we got here. This is good. This is good.
Married couples. Let's get that fuck out of the way.
All right.
Get a water bottle. Yeah, thanks. I think we're good. I think we're probably going to start, right? Yeah, I think that works. And you know what? We'll get the okay from them. I think they're just putting the final touches on that shot. And once that is done, we're good. Hey, Laura. You good?
Sorry, he's been replaced by Sid, who looks quite
Just
similar.
me.
So there's only one guy allowed at the time.
We good? We live?
We're live. Awesome.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Yes. We can start.
Hey guys, welcome to our panel, Esports Journalism, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm guessing
one
I'm
are
the
you?
ugly.
Can I be the good?
Yeah,
I
you
like
got
the
it.
good.
Those three are the
good.
bad for sure.
Okay, right, games.
I accept this.
It begins.
All right, so you guys are probably wondering who I am and also why I'm modding. So my name's Sokodoko, that's probably what you know me as. I was talking to Joshua, Susie's brother, and he also works for Inven. And we were talking about random stuff. He asked me if I would come speak at the Invent thing, and he said it would be easy, but he apparently lied to me because I have to deal with Monty, Dorian, Richard, and Nick. So
I'm the good.
yeah.
Don't worry.
All right.
I'm the good.
So let's start by introducing ourselves, left to right.
Yeah, so hello, my name is Nick D'Orazio. I am the Director of Strategic Content at Invent Global. That strategic was just a flair of my own because I wanted to be extra. Really, what I do at Invent Global is I try to make sure that whatever we write has a goal, has a strategy. I'm not sure if you were here for the last talk that Thorin had, but you learned a lot about how sometimes people can write about esports journalism with maybe a lot of vanity or there's really no point for it. They just want to write about their favorite game and they rant and they just have fun having some game review. My job is to make those people very sad and to tell them that their writing is not good. So that is what I do for Invent Global.
I'm actually not a journalist, really.
You tried it one time.
You were. We remember. You're still in the club. It's all good.
I did do some journalism. Sometimes I do journalism when it's convenient for me, meaning that I need to take down some people who are, unethical towards me in various ways.
Have you narrowed it down?
I'm really a journalism of convenience.
The best kind.
He uses it as a weapon, a personal weapon.
No, it's not a personal weapon. It is a way to hold bad actors accountable, right?
Excellent.
But I do actually really support a lot of the great journalism that goes on in esports, and I at least can have that gratitude for it, even though obviously since I'm a caster and working directly for companies, sometimes I can't say everything that I would like to say, so I'm grateful for those people who do. And there's a large philosophical discussion to be had around that with, of course, everyone else on this panel, but obviously produce some podcasts as well and sort of stay active.
Sure. Okay, so first of all, I just literally gave a half an hour talk about my history in esports journalism. And I noticed half of you weren't here, so screw you. Of course I'm going to come and censor myself. You missed the best part. So if you don't know who I am, I was literally voted esports journalist of the year about 2 years ago, and nobody can do a damn thing about it. That's a fact. You can't go back in time. So was him. Same applies to him.
Yeah.
So my main job is...
He doesn't speak for me.
I am the spokesperson for Richard Lewis, and always been. No,
Please
the thing
stop.
is, my main job in general, because obviously I'm going to divide up my labour of time, is I walk a tightrope of political taught opinions on the internet and try not to fall off. Occasionally do fall off. And then when I haven't got any more shit posts to do, I have to crack down, do an article, do a video. And as I said, I've done it for a long time. So if you don't know who I am, don't even know why you're here, really. So you, Richard?
Thanks. I'm Richard Lewis, currently unemployed.
And deplatformed.
And currently unemployed and in the process of being unpersoned from the internet. So it's a good time to start networking. Any job offers, I will listen.
Are you even here?
Yeah, I know, right? This is it. This is the farewell tour that I'm doing. It's like Leonard Cohen.
When they do the Soviet edit, it'll just stop on the frame here.
Yeah, like that fade out on Cheers. But yeah, I've been doing investigative journalism in esports for 15 years and made a lot of friends doing that because as this industry's got bigger and people are getting more and more money and the stakes are higher, obviously the truth becomes a very scarce commodity. So that's I'm trying to get back into it. I thought I could quit journalism. There's something that Hunter S. Thompson used to call the fire in the nuts, which is that you just get so hyped up about doing one thing. It's all you get this drive. And I've been trying to quit journalism for 3 years. I went to E-League, I hosted a TV show. I thought that would fill the hole. It didn't. Then I became a director at a company making lots of money. I thought that would fill the hole. It didn't. And I just quit that job literally the day before this panel to come and talk about journalism, which is pretty much all I know and all I want to do. So, yeah, that's me.
Richard, let's go a little bit deeper on that. What is esports journalism?
All right, Dr. Phil. I think I turned my mic off then, I'm good. So it's a stupid distinction, honestly, and it's one I've always hated. I hate calling myself an esports journalist. I hate introducing myself as an esports journalist. It was especially stupid 10 years ago because no one knew what that was. No one even knew what esports was. So you'd be like, I'm an esports journalist. What's esports, you say? Right, well, okay, I'll explain that to you. And then 30 minutes later, they've kind of wandered off, so it was a waste of time. But I hated that term because I never defined myself that way. I went to university, I studied journalism. I wanted to be a journalist at a very young age. It was what I wanted to do. So what is esports journalism? It's just journalism, in the esports space. Unfortunately, what you increasingly find is there are people that define themselves as esports journalists. And what that means is they place limitations on the type of work they're willing to do to exist in this space. It's like the esports is more important than the journalist part of the title. And that's the big issue. It's like, I want to be in this community. I want to be in this happening industry. Well, now you got to tell the truth. Now you got to go out and say something deeply unpopular that might make it so you can't get a job for a year. You willing to do it? And a lot of people say, actually, no, I'm not. So I think making the distinction, esports journalist, I'm very wary around people that call themselves that, for that reason. I think you're either a journalist or you ain't.
Yeah, and if I could actually just jump in for a sec, I think a lot of people in the space have had that same hesitation. I've often had that hesitation, especially early in my career, in which, they're hiring for an esports a journalist, or maybe someone throws that term at me, and I'm just like, well, I've always been, I consider a content creator, or I used to call myself a games writer. I mean, honestly, when I really first got started on a blog no one cared about, I wrote about strategy. I wrote about builds. I wrote about game reviews, right? So I think there's a lot of truth in that. A lot of the people that did first start off in this, a lot of them have been told that they're games journalists, and then they just try their best to do it, but they don't have the training, or they've never went out to get the training. So I think that's a really astute point.
Yeah, because for most people, esports journalists can be game reviewers or people just talking about streamer drama. Like, what actually is esports journalism, and what are your best works that you guys have done in that field?
Well, that's actually also one of the reasons why, even though I said that obviously they describe me as esports journalist, my main title I prefer is esports historian, because my style always was I want to write about the great articles, great teams, chart history of things, look for trends over time, etc. And that is part of journalism. I mean, obviously you can do historical journalism, of course, you can do stuff that's polemic, etc. But I will say, like, that's why I think when Richard is being very precise about journalism in that sense. It's like, if you really are someone who's there to investigate and you are there to expose, then you can't be like the people 10 years ago who were part of this small little industry where everyone's at the same after party and everyone's friends with the same player and everyone writes to the same site. And then guess what? Your friend's the criminal. Your friend's the one who's screwing someone over. And do you just go, well, not my business. I'll just do my article about how Halo 2 is a really sick game. No, that's not a reasonable
Which
choice
it
at
is.
that point. It was all right, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
Spawned
you
a few
want
people
to.
who are absolutely wretched in esports. But whatever, enough about that.
Yeah, but you-
Put the headband down.
But you want to get invited to the Halo 2 after party, right? Like, don't you want to get invited to the closed access? And that's
I
why
didn't
people would
personally,
write
but yeah,
nice.
some people did, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just an important thing to realize that, like, okay, so it's all types of journalism, like you do a blog. Yeah, I came up at a time when the word blogger was like a derisory term, right? I'm sure we've all heard that if there's any writers out there. Oh, you're just a blogger. Like, yeah, it's the future. What are you talking about? Like, everyone is. But, doing a blog, where it's your thoughts, that's a type of journalism. Doing historical pieces, that's a type of journalism. Doing write-ups about games and tactics, that's a type of journalism. There's just different forms, and without wanting to sound conceited or arrogant or get accused of that new hipster term gatekeeping or whatever the kids are saying these days, there are different forms that have different importance and different weight, and we all know it in the industry. And there's some journalism that's throwaway garbage. It's garbage. It's literally designed to farm clicks. I'm not even just talking about stuff with clickbait titles. I'm talking about literally you rewrite somebody else's news post from somebody else's website to go on your website.
With a better title.
Yeah, with a slightly better title, or you change a few words in a thesaurus. What's the value in that? And the answer is absolutely nothing. It's the devil, making work for idle hands. It serves no purpose. So that's garbage. If you're doing that and you don't have a desire to go on to the next level, I can't respect you, honestly. Real talk. Then, you move up a notch, and then I would probably say you get match reviews, write-ups, like eyewitness accounts. This is valuable because it's a matter of historical record. Then while we're talking about historical record, you probably go up a notch. You get the Duncan's kind of stuff. Duncan's very important. He curates all the storylines that we've had down the years across multiple games. And I think that has huge value. And then above that, maybe, and you might disagree, I don't know, maybe interviews. I think next, good long form, well-researched interviews, which Duncan also does, of course, that has the value. And then, I'm getting into my wheelhouse now, so this is where it probably comes across a little bit arrogant. I think the highest form of journalism probably is investigative stuff, and there's not enough of it because people are terrified to do it because of the constraining politics of the industry. We live under the tyranny of games developers, all of us. Like, who here hasn't had their careers wrecked by a games developer, like straight up, and it's their ball, and yeah, you're too nice. It's their ball, and they get to take it away at any time. And if you want to exist in this industry, they think they hold all the cards and have a large say. And for the majority of people, that want to do the type of work I'm talking about, the type that I believe has the most value, they're afraid of that. They're young people. They're young people, or they want to work in the industry so much that they're terrified at the prospect of having it took away. And that's just the reality. And that's why I think that work has the most value, because it's the most important to keep the industry honest, but it's also the most dangerous work to do.
Yeah, and I think that people often, one of the biggest problems that we have in esports journalism is people get so tied up with whether they personally like the journalist versus looking at the value of their work.
We are pretty unlikable people.
Yeah,
too.
exactly, right? So, but see, you have to, I mean, but part of that is we don't care what other people think about us, and we're willing to go that extra mile because we realize, especially people who have been around the industry for 10 or 15 years, how exploitative and corrupt this industry has been at times. And it's hugely problematic. And if there isn't a reasonable audience out there to believe the research, and especially on the investigative end of things that have been done, like, it is absolutely necessary to make sure, we only do this because we really fucking care about esports and that it's a healthy environment. And we don't want to keep putting up with the same exploitative bullshit over and over again. And if you look at, people who have broken major stories, like Richard talks about his investigative journalism, and he was a key part of taking down these CSGO gambling sites that were basically rigging the odds, encouraging children to gamble, and was literally a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that needed to stop. And, people still give Richard crap for a bunch of other stuff, despite the fact that is
some of it warranted. I'll agree.
One of the most important stories, not just in esports, but in gaming. And in the limited amount of journalism I've done, I've been here today with people who gaslit me, lied to me about caster rates when I was working, and if I didn't take a public stand, the result of me taking a public stand was a literal doubling of caster rates in some games. And so I feel good about that, and but it costs so much personally to do that, because I basically just got exiled from a game forever as a result.
Yep.
I would also, by the way, echo Richard's sentiment. I agree. If you're going to make a hierarchy of importance and magnitude, I would put investigative journalism at the top, because even though I do think historical stuff's obviously my main passion, my interest, the difference is if I historically rank a guy second who someone else thinks was the best, I don't get killed. Well, as long as TSM fans aren't in the audience. But the difference is you do a real story that blows up someone who's a gambling person or someone who's wrecking someone's career. I mean, we're not quite at that point yet, but yeah, you could get killed. There could be real life consequences for your career, for your person, for your reputation. And that's why actually, this is the perfect analogy for it, in fact. I could all day long write historical articles. There's so much history at this point in time. But the reason why I sometimes do those pieces myself, where I expose someone, where I investigate something, is because that's a story that has to be done. And so even though I could write the article that just gets the safe hits and disagreements just a mean comment, you sometimes have to be willing to take the bullet. I'd give the analogy, spoiler for that rubbish movie 300, but there's a great bit in that where the essential theme of the movie is, at the end, he throws this spear. His whole army's been killed, he's died. He throws a spear and he nicks the edge of this god king of Persia, right? And that's what journalism can do. The point is, you can't take down the god king, you can't stop the evil empire, but you can actually make people known that that's what they are. And sometimes you can get one nick of blood, and that one nick of blood is worth more than you might realize.
Yeah, and you actually mentioned that there's consequences to it. And I think a big part of why these three gentlemen are speaking with such passion about it is they have been doing it for such a long time, and that is precisely what gives them the confidence to be able to take on those risks. I have managed a lot of writers over time, and many of them is because they just get intimidated out, right? I mean, they're drawn to esports because they're young. And they're drawn to games because they're young, and they work on the low salaries that game journalists were paid years and years ago because they're young. These are the people that may even accept that. And if you're trying to ask them, hey, you need to write something that's critical about the game you love, it's about the company you love, and half of them want to work for that company one day. That's why they're even getting into game journalism, because they view they're in to the games industry. It's an incredibly hard ask, especially because they have to go through and put on the investigative journalist hat, and that's not really what they signed up for. They signed up for, oh, I just wanted to write about games, and I wanted a chance to interview, my famous players. Yeah, something like that. But there are very, very few, I'd say, journalists who, and I'm sure it's happening now. There's journalists who are like, oh, hey, what's this esports thing? Oh, this is a thing that this is a lot of money in it. And I'm sure we are going to see people who have been doing this before, who have been taking down orgs or have been doing those nicks. But it hasn't been historically the reality of esports journalism.
I mean, you guys are talking about all the sacrifices you have to make to be in this field. What makes it worth it for you guys personally?
Well, yeah, go on.
The actual nicking the person in the face is pretty cool. They're a goddamn pro, you can't do anything. Well, can you? There's the question, right? Here's the thing. Me and Richard have often discussed this many times, and one thing we agree upon generally is you have to be a bit nuts. There has to be some reason to drive you. Like, for example, if I do a story, so at the moment I've been one of the people publicizing this thing in Counter-Strike with a company that owns the top team, and they also own a tournament circuit that the team plays in. Now, people will say to me, you just clearly don't like that company. Yeah, it's a brilliant motivator to find all the real things they've done that are wrong and expose them at the cost of my own integrity and career. Like, that's actually a pretty good way to do it, because people are going to say it was that reason I did it, not because it was actually like bogus stuff. But that is just, again, attacking the person. If you look at what I've reported, it's worth doing because, I have my own personal reason, but I haven't made the story up. The story's real. That's the distinction people sometimes miss. You don't just pick your enemy and go, right, what am I going to make up today? Luckily, our enemies tend to be the scumbags. It's easy to find a way to hate these guys.
Yeah, and I also will add that, there are other, I don't want to say more compassionate, because I know deep down there is a compassion for the downtrodden. But
Try to hide it.
Yeah. There are
You're doing a great job, buddy.
There are a lot of other ways in which a journalist in esports can make the environment better. Actually, recently, I guess within this year, one of the favorite things that I've ever written, it was just a piece called "Overwatch Players Are Tired," and it was I have interviewed players throughout the entirety of season 1, and through all of my interviews with them, I pretty much curated all of these quotes that maybe were said on the side or maybe were just little hints. But when you added them all together and when you really put it in context of how long some of those things were, it did paint a story that a lot of players thanked me for writing. They're like, yeah, thanks. I was absolutely demolished, and it didn't seem like anyone cared. And anytime they'd say something about it, it'd be like, oh, well, aren't you playing on the Overwatch League? That's like the happiest thing, like in the world. So there are many different ways. There's the nicks you can throw, but then there's also, sometimes these pro players don't have a voice for themselves to be able to tell these stories, and you can really do some good with just some compassionate, long-form interviews.
And regardless, I think it's always important to note, based on what Nick is saying and what everybody else is saying, that no matter what the companies say, no matter what the teams say about their environments, it is always bullshit. Because at the end of the day, these companies exist to be businesses and to make a profit.
Oh, no, they have strong family values. And, it's important to get players that represent, what they're trying to do in society.
And like, you just have to
80-20
really believe that.
80-20 split.
Like, you just have to keep that in mind, because they are designed to make the maximum amount of money. And so somebody else has to, from the outside, has to keep them in line.
Yeah, for me, a little bit wanting to stick it to the big companies. I'm the same. I'm a bit of a lefty. I don't like corporations as a rule. I think, what Monty's saying, they are all full of shit.